You are one of the greatest assets the United States has. You think I'm talking hyperbolically? I am not. The American gun owner, familiar with firearms, trained, and understand the rules of engagement and self-defense, is a powerful asset. Something that our founding fathers understood. And guess what, folks? Other countries are starting to pick up on this as well, including, ready for this, Finland. You're not going to want to miss how I connect the dots up and make you feel proud in one moment. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and author of Disarm, What the Ukraine War Teaches Americans About the Right to Bear Arms. Stay tuned for an upcoming announcement about a brand new book very soon. All right, folks, so I'm here to connect dots for you that are not always obvious. But it turns out there was a major announcement out of Finland. That's right, the country of Finland. This said that the Finnish government is going to help sponsor and encourage the creation of and the opening of 300 new firearms or shooting ranges all across Finland. Now, just for those of you who are not the best in terms of geography, Finland borders a country called the Soviet Union. That's what it used to be called. Now, of course, it's called Russia under Vladimir Putin. So Finland, which used to border the Soviet Union, now borders Russia. And of course, there's concern about a potential Russian invasion because, as we know, in World War II, the Soviet Union invaded Finland, and it was a very bloody war. We'll get to that in 1 second. So it turns out that the country of Finland wants to encourage people to engage in marksmanship competitions and to become more proficient with firearms. There's already a requirement for young men to serve in the military, but the goal is to continue to have Finnish residents, Finnish citizens, continue to be proficient and trained in the use of firearms. Specifically, according to the news reports, the country is hoping to encourage greater civilian interest in the national defense because of these increased threats from a potential Russian invasion. Now, here's what's interesting and why I want to connect the dots. I've always said that the greatest army in the world is, yes, the American military, but it's not just the American military, the armed forces per se. It's also the fact that we in the United States have a long-standing history of a self-defense-oriented gun culture. Hear what I just said? I did not say a gun culture. We in the United States do not just have a gun culture, because a gun culture could include just a tradition of hunting or skeet shooting or gentlemanly pursuits that we see in northern Great Britain, like fox hunting back in the day. No, I'm not talking about a gun culture like that. I'm talking about a uniquely American gun culture, which is really a private firearms-owning, self-defense-oriented gun culture. Did you hear what I just said? A self-defense-oriented gun culture. Now, I wrote extensively about this previously in various books. We have a self-defense-oriented gun culture, and that is particularly important because it really speaks to what our founding fathers understood. And remember, the founding fathers, when they wrote the U.S. Constitution, they studied every country that ever existed. They looked at all the governments that had failed and had taken away rights and had become tyrannical, and empires that had risen and had fallen. And they studied all this to put together the United States Constitution. That was the work mostly of James Madison, who did all this research. And as you know, part of this process of the negotiation and creation of the Constitution included the Bill of Rights, which includes the Second Amendment's right of the people to keep and bear arms. Now, this is extremely important, and it does connect up to what the Finnish government and the Finnish people are now learning, which is that you really want to have an armed population because it has tremendous value to the whole country to protect your liberty. Because if the Soviet Union or the Russians today invade you, that's not great for any kind of liberty, because if you don't have a country, that's kind of a bad thing. And if foreign invaders invade you, that's kind of a bad thing, I would say. Now, our founding fathers understood this, and then I'm going to show you how the Finnish government figured this out. And of course, we're going to talk briefly about the most famous Finnish gun owner of all times, the man known as the White Death, and all the people he killed, specifically over 500 confirmed kills as a sniper in World War II by a Finnish sniper, arguably the greatest sniper that ever existed, and that was a Finnish sharpshooter by the name of Simo Häyhä. I believe I pronounced that right. I'm not the best Finnish speaker out there, but Simo Häyhä was the greatest Finnish sharpshooter of all times, maybe the greatest sniper of all time, because he has over 505 confirmed kills during the era of World War II. But I digress. Specifically, let's go back to the U.S. Constitution. When the Second Amendment was adopted, it was designed to thwart all forms of tyranny. It's very important to understand that all forms of tyranny, not just street criminals, not just foreign invaders, not just a tyrannical government, not just domestic insurrections, not just animal attacks, all of the above and then some. Anytime you're in a state of war against someone or something, the ability to use violence to thwart and protect your lives, the lives of your loved ones, the lives of your community, the life of your country, all of this is legitimized by the work of John Locke, who really was an inspiration for the founding generation. But specifically, I want to talk about the Second Amendment. We've talked about one of the earliest Supreme Court justices in the United States was a man named Joseph Story. Very important for you to know this man. Joseph Story wrote in the early 19th century something called the Commentaries on the United States Constitution, really the first comprehensive treatise on the United States Constitution itself. And he wrote extensively and thought that the right of the people to keep and bear arms was mission critical, and the armed citizenry was mission critical to preserving our freedom. Here is what Joseph Story wrote, and tell me if this sounds like the sort of thing that today, the Finns today are learning this lesson that they could have learned if they had just read about Joseph Story and the Second Amendment itself. This is what Story writes in 1833. The importance of this article, which is the Second Amendment, will scarcely be doubted by any persons who have duly reflected upon the subject. The militia is the natural defense of a free country against sudden foreign invasions, domestic insurrections, and domestic usurpations of power by rulers. The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary power of rulers, and will generally, even if these are successful in the first instance, enable the people to resist and triumph over them. Powerful language by early Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story. For those of you who may not remember this, Joseph Story is the author of the Amistad decision made famous by the Steven Spielberg movie called Amistad, where Joseph Story ruled that the slaves that had rebelled and engaged in mutiny, if you will, against the Spanish captors on the open sea and then captured the Spanish ship and then floated their way or sailed their way to Connecticut. Joseph Story is the one that issued the famous Supreme Court ruling that said the slaves were entitled to do what they did and they were free men and could go free. They were not the property of the Spaniards or anyone else for that matter. So again, Joseph Story understood the importance of freedom, and he understood the importance of arms and armed citizenry for protecting against foreign invaders and other forms of tyranny, which brings us back to Finland and their decision to expand rifleman range and gun ranges. What's interesting, and I bring this and connect all the dots up right here and right now, is this. In the United States, there's an expansion of self-defense oriented gun culture all across this great country. We don't need the government here in the United States to encourage gun ownership, although of course they do to some degree with the civilian marksmanship program. But the point is that we Americans understand the importance of the right to keep and bear arms and being trained and proficient and being prepared against all possible attacks by all forms of tyranny. It's interesting how the Finnish government feels the need to educate their public, to teach them and encourage them to shoot, where here in the United States, we don't need the government to encourage us. We do it anyway. And what's interesting, of course, is that in many respects, many aspects of the modern government in the United States is trying to disarm us. They're trying to discourage us from having a self-defense gun culture. As to their motives, I'll let you speculate, but my guess is it's not the best motive out there as to why they're trying to disarm Americans, because why would you want your citizens to be disarmed when the rest of the world understands you want to go the opposite direction, as we're seeing there in Finland? Nevertheless, I'll let you figure out why you think they want us disarmed. I have my theories and thoughts, and I'm sure you have yours as well. But the bottom line is, I think overall this is good news, because when other countries move in favor of the right to keep and bear arms, and they recognize the importance of an armed citizenry, not just armed with guns and ammunition, but also trained and proficient in their use, I think this all is favorable to the Second Amendment community here in the United States because it allows us to point to other cultures and other places to say, well, that's interesting. If guns didn't protect people and prevent bad people from doing bad things to good people, then why, for example, are the Finns, why are they going out there encouraging private gun ownership by opening additional shooting ranges and gun ranges and so on? An interesting question that hopefully you can use to great effect on social media and beyond to defend our right to keep arms here in the United States. Before I wrap up, I just want to give you a couple additional facts about the famous Finnish sharpshooter, the greatest sniper of all times, arguably Siimu Heihe. Specifically, he had 505 confirmed kills. He was a farmer who lived near the border of the Soviet Union. And what's quite interesting is apparently he did not use any kind of scopes. He basically used iron sights to do his killing. Apparently also, and I'll put some links to some of the stories about him below, he has over 200, in addition, he also had 200 killings of the enemy of the Soviet troops using a submachine gun. So it wasn't just a sniper rifle, he also used a submachine gun as well. What's also interesting is he dressed in all white and he would eat snow to prevent his breath from being seen. He also did not like to use any kind of scope because he thought that that might give a reflection and basically let people know where he was at so they could shoot at him. The Soviet Union considered this guy to be the White Death because he was so effective. And the good news is, and this kind of interesting, despite all of the dangers he put himself in, he was actually shot in the face but survived. He actually managed to live until the age of 96. I don't think I'm going to make it that long, but yep. Siimu Heihe, the sniper from Finland, lived to 96 years of age, and he was known as the White Death. And it's interesting that the Finns are learning lessons that we, the founding fathers, understood in the 18th century about the importance of armed citizens. So let's see how this all plays out. Well, there you have it. Hope you learned something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. Make sure you subscribe and resubscribe. A lot of people are getting knocked off the list. Don't forget to follow me on X at Four Boxes Diner. And we'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.